Hey homesteaders, gardeners, and cooks. My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm. This morning I am making baked oatmeal as part of the pantry challenge. If you watch Becky from Acre Homestead, this is basically her recipe but with some changes. My recipe, I cut the size down by about half, and the big deal here is I am going to show you how to use this as part of the pantry challenge. So this is some spiced plums that I canned in September of 2021. We had an abundance of plums that year, and kind of in desperation, I started throwing them in jars. I usually make jam out of plums, but I have plenty of jam, and so I didn't need any more of that. And it's now January of 2023. So clearly we're not going through these very fast. And I've done this a couple of times with this particular recipe, and it is fantastic. And so it's just a few ingredients. It's a great way to use up a pint of your home canned fruit really easily and quickly. And it makes the whole process much simpler because I'm not actually adding a whole lot of added sugar to the recipe. I'm just using the syrup that's in the jar. So let me show you what that looks like. These plums, when I canned them, I threw in some whole spices. I make a jam that is really lovely with cinnamon, cardamom, black pepper, and allspice. And so when I was canning these up, I thought that would be a nice thing to add to it. Also a little bit of orange extract. But my husband and I have a joke. We've been married for more than 25 years. And if I put a whole spice in anything, it can be one whole peppercorn in a gallon of food, it will end up in his dish. Like the number of times that he has bitten into a whole spice because I put it in a dish and didn't find it is truly beyond all odds. And so when I put the spices in this, I put them right on top. So I just picked them out, but I'm actually really carefully stirring this to try to make sure that I didn't miss any. Because inevitably, if there is a whole allspice berry in here, it is going to end up in his bowl. It's like he's got some kind of crazy spice magnetism. It's just nuts. I did put a little bit of sweetener in here. It wasn't completely necessary because the syrup that these are in is also sweetened. I use a light syrup when I'm making canned fruit. You actually don't have to include any sugar when you can fruit, but it does have a slight preservative quality to it in terms of the fruit holding and looking better and not oxidizing. And so you can use a sugar substitute or not, just use water. They're acidic enough that it will be safe, but in terms of how they look, they're going to brown and kind of degrade pretty quickly, even though they're safe to eat. So I do use a light syrup when I'm canning my fruit. But the sweetener that you saw me put in there is actually a recipe from that 1870s homestead where she made a syrup out of corn cobs. So it's a corn cob syrup that is really just a brown sugar syrup that actually has corn cob in it. Honestly, it's not like you're getting a ton of sweetener from those corn cobs. But I made it because it sounded like fun, and I thought it was a fun way to utilize some of the corn cobs when I froze some corn this year. And so that was actually the sweetener that went in here. Becky's recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and I used 1/8 of a cup. I'm cutting the recipe in half, so I used 1/8 of a cup of the syrup instead. So that's all there is to it. I know Becky, when she makes this, just dumps it in the pan that she's going to cook it in. I really like to be able to beat the eggs better than that, and so I don't do that. I also happen to be out of milk right now, and so I used a powdered milk, which should work just perfectly fine. This gets baked at 350 for 35 to 40 minutes, give or take. I'm gonna start at 30 because I'm making a smaller amount, and we'll see what it looks like. My oven is preheated to 350. What I really like about this recipe is that the eggs add a lot more protein to what normally would be a pretty carb-heavy dish. So we'll be back in a few. Let's see how we're doing here. Just want to make sure the center of this, yeah, can you see that juice in there? It's not quite done. We probably need another 5 minutes or so. Back in it goes. All right, I gave this 5 more minutes. I'm just going to do a quick temp on this. Oh, we're plenty hot. Basically anything over 180 is going to be fine in terms of those eggs being thoroughly cooked and not having to worry about it. So I think this is just juicy because it's juicy, because there's a lot of liquid in it. So I'm going to let that sit. I think it's done. You can see we've got some really nice browning around the edges, and it's also pulling away from the edge a little bit. That's another pretty good indication that it's finished. So I'm going to let this sit for 5 minutes or so before I cut it and let all that moisture absorb a little bit more, and then we'll have some breakfast. All right, let's get this cut into quarters and have some breakfast. What I really like about this recipe, 1, it's easy. 2, it's using up a pantry staple, which is awesome. And then I always have oatmeal on hand as well. But 3, because those eggs are in here, essentially, if this is 4 servings, you're getting an egg and a quarter per serving. And so you're getting a nice dose of protein in what would otherwise be a fairly starchy, carb-heavy meal. And I really, really like that. A little bit of extra protein makes you feel fuller. It makes the meal a lot more balanced. So yeah, let's hear it for eggs in there. And the sugar I put in this, totally optional. Like, you could have left that out entirely if you were really trying to stay away from sugar in your breakfast. So there you go, baked oatmeal a la Acre Homestead, but with a few adaptations and cutting the recipe down in size, just because we don't need a 9x13 pan of baked oatmeal. It would take us too long to go through. Give it a try. Use up that canned fruit that you canned last summer when it was coming out of your ears and you didn't know what to do with it. This is a great way to use it that isn't just out of a jar, eating it plain. Thanks for watching, Tribe. I have new videos coming out every week, and I should have lots of Pantry Challenge videos coming out over the course of January and maybe even into February. So keep watching. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a like. Subscribe if you're really into this. I really appreciate those subscriptions, and we'll see you next time.